Thank you for coming to today's press conference sponsored by West Virginians United. Today is Good Friday, and it is appropriate that we take a moment to reflect on the journey of Jesus to the cross and to remember the words of the Nicene Creed that, for our sake, he was crucified under Pontius Pilate, he suffered death and was buried, the third day he rose again. Likewise, Hebrews 13:12 through 14, therefore Jesus also suffered outside the gate in order to sanctify the people by his own blood. Let us go to him then, outside the camp, and bear the abuse he endured. For here we have no lasting city, but we are looking for the city that is to come. It might be important to note that Jesus was crucified under a government official bearing the full weight of Rome, and that our calling is to go out to where Christ is, that is, to where people are suffering today. Pope Francis made such a trip and was visiting the people of Lampedusa to thank them for their care of refugees who had landed on their shores. During his sermon, he reminded the people of a question that God asked of humanity: where is your brother? This, of course, is from the story of Cain and Abel and is followed by Cain's reply, am I my brother's keeper? Which is probably the first rhetorical question in the Bible, because the answer is most decidedly, yes, I am my brother and my sister's keeper. Where is your brother? Where is your sister? These are questions that we all should be asking with any major public policy change, but one that appears to have been neglected with regards to these tax proposals. Many of our sisters and brothers are not doing well. They are struggling with their health, poverty, getting enough to eat, trying to get through school, and living from paycheck to paycheck. Many of our sisters and brothers are children, the elderly, and the disabled. We are responsible for them, both as individuals and as a state. Government was established, after all, to promote the general or common welfare. To paraphrase Dietrich Bonhoeffer, governments most reflect the reign of God when they preserve life. He also emphasized that the church may need to remind the government of its calling from time to time. You no doubt have heard a lot of numbers from the House and Senate concerning the personal income tax. But here are the numbers that the West Virginia Council of Churches is concerned about. 312, 118 West Virginians living in poverty. 91,000 children living in poverty in West Virginia. 1 in 3 of our children under the age of 5 lives in poverty. 28.6% of African Americans in West Virginia live in poverty. And 18.5% of women in West Virginia live in poverty. Medicaid covers half the births in West Virginia. It is from this perspective that the West Virginia Council of Churches views legislation. That is, how do these bills impact the most vulnerable in our state? Here to breathe some life into these numbers are persons representing the NAACP, long-term recovery, the National Association of Social Workers, an undergraduate student at Marshall University, and then we'll sort of wrap it up all together. And is Ron English here? Yes, okay. And I actually should probably introduce myself. My name is Jeff Allen. I'm the Executive Director of the West Virginia Council of Churches. Introduce Autumn McGraw, a West Virginian in long-term recovery and someone who has benefited from the Jobs and Hopes program. Please welcome Autumn.
hand up, not a handout, to people that want to change their lives. Jobs and Hope provides countless services and referrals to the formerly incarcerated and people in recovery from substance use disorder. With this help and referrals to services, people just like me are able to become respective, productive, tax-paying citizens. After 20 years of active addiction, 2 felony convictions, countless numbers of misdemeanors, and thousands of dollars worth of fines, I had no hope of gainful employment. Jobs and Hope has helped me obtain my license while I'm paying off my fines. They helped me build a resume, linked me with a computer class, and helped me with my West Virginia care experience so I could practice my skills as a recovery coach, and soon hope to work on my expungement. Today, with the help of Jobs and Hope, I have landed a job beyond my wildest dreams. I am able to advocate for people in recovery homes all across our state to ensure safe and quality housing while they're on their way to long-term recovery. I am just one example of the thousands. Chastity is a woman that struggled with substance use disorder. While in treatment, her recovery coach referred her to Jobs and Hope. Since then, she has obtained her license. Jobs and Hope referred her to a transportation service that helped her get a reliable car. They helped her with her FAFSA and enroll in nursing school. She's been on the dean's list ever since and well on her way to pursuing her nursing dream. And then there's Paula. Paula has had substance use disorder for over 16 years. She was incarcerated over 6 times. Jobs and Hope helped her enroll in recovery coach class with a scholarship. They helped her build a resume. They walked her through the West Virginia CARES process, and today she is employed in her local hospital as a recovery coach. And she's able to give back to the community that she had harmed for so long, and also help other people just like her on their way to recovery. And then there's Tabby. Tabby is from Central West Virginia. She moved to Charleston in hopes to stabilize her life. With the help of Jobs and Hope and their dental service they provide, her new smile has given her the confidence to enroll in a technical training program and hopes to pursue her apprenticeship in electrician work. Jobs and Hope needs more funding, not budget cuts. They are essential to rebuilding West Virginia in an epidemic that plagues our state. They provide invaluable resources for the solution to our problem. These services help stop a perpetual, costly, revolving door criminal justice system and offers West Virginia a way out. Cutting funds to these services will cost more money to West Virginia's already thin pockets and will save countless West Virginian lives. Thanks, guys.
Our next speaker this morning is, I almost said the Reverend Sam Hickman. Sam Hickman, who is the Executive Director of the National Association of Social Workers, West Virginia chapter. Please welcome Sam Hickman.
Thank you. Social work is sometimes called the secular ministry, so you're not far off. I have the wind in the microphone, and my hand's probably going to be over there in a minute. Reminded me this morning's paper that the first day of spring is not always the first spring day. Here we are. I'm here to talk a little bit about the importance of the state budget for health care in West Virginia, particularly our Medicaid program. Long-term care is the single highest Medicaid expenditure. It's an expression of our West Virginia values, that we care for our elderly people. In my previous practice as a social worker, I helped hard-working West Virginians who had exhausted their life savings apply for Medicaid nursing home care. It was the last thing they wanted, but thank God it was available when they had nowhere else to turn. If any of these tax plans go into effect, essential services like Medicaid will be cut to the bone and people will suffer. I don't believe that legislators who are pushing for these pays for half of the births in West Virginia. It covers in-home care services for the elderly and people with disabilities to prevent them from having to go to vastly more expensive institutions or hospitals or nursing homes. And that's not even to mention the fact that its health insurance coverage helps with prescription drugs, vulnerable children in foster care, mental health services, almost all of the substance use disorder treatment services in the state of West Virginia are covered by Medicaid, and so much more. Instead of reinvesting money in Medicaid every year, as we should do if we have a surplus, Medicaid gives us a 3-to-1 match in federal dollars, which is a pretty good deal. Legislators could use a surplus to offset future health care costs. Instead, they use it to offset budget losses, revenue losses, and that is not smart. Let's go back for a minute to when I was a hospital social worker. One day I remember a woman I had to talk with in particular who could no longer take care of herself. She had no family support, and I had to talk to her about making the tough decision to go to a nursing home. And as I reasonably and patiently explained this to her, her eyes grew more increasingly wide and angry. And when I finished, she looked up to me and she said, "You damn Republican." Now, when I consider the implications and consequences of any of these personal income tax reduction plans, I have to say that her words capture my sentiments exactly. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Cody Nunley, an undergraduate social work student at Marshall University. Please welcome Cody Nunley.
Hello, my name is Cody Nunley, and I am grateful for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm a junior level student at Marshall University in the social work program. So today, I would like to talk to you about House Bill 3300. To begin, I grew up in the small town of Logan, West Virginia, and accompanying small towns comes little opportunity. I went to a high school at Logan Senior High School where their main objective is getting you ready for higher education, wherever that may be. However, time grows faster, and as one travels throughout high school, and before I felt like I could process my youth, I was a senior. As an 18-year-old senior, still figuring out life, I chose to leave my home in high school because of how the drug epidemic affected my family. I stayed at friends' houses, RVs, in my car, all because of the dream or the hope of not only a better life, but a higher education. All while this was happening, I had a brother going through the early stages of adolescence in school. After high school, I decided on going to community college for early credits while still living in my car and bouncing from home to home. However, I was still unsatisfied. My mental health was deteriorating due to my circumstances, so I decided to pursue Marshall University in the social work program because it gave me a sense of purpose and a sense of belonging. I have been conditioned to understand the distraught, the destruction, and the struggle for the education and safety of the youth in our state. Within the passing of House Bill 3300 would lead to cuts for funding for higher education and the promised scholarship. This affects the families of West Virginia directly, not only in the sense of funding for prestigious schools such as Marshall University and West Virginia University, but the mental health of these families as well. It is scholarships like Promise that relieves families of the economic worries that college brings. So cutting the Promise scholarship would be disheartening to the youth of our state, and sending the message that higher education is not one of West Virginia's main priorities. I can speak for the youth of West Virginia when I say that higher education is one of the only hopes of relieving the hardships that some face in small towns like Logan, and further giving life to a hope of a better day. To conclude, cuts to the higher education affects Marshall directly, as well as the youth and families of our state. If the personal income tax bill is supposed to bring people to West Virginia, have you considered how many people will leave the state because higher education is not one of our priorities? Families do not want to send their children to a college that is underfunded. Thank you.
At this time, I'm very honored to introduce the Reverend Ron English, President of the Charleston chapter of the NAACP. Please welcome Reverend Ron English.
I come today as president of the Charleston branch of the NAACP and to also represent the president, Owen Brown, and who is state president of NAACP, in solidarity with the community service organizations and groups that have come against House Bill 3300 because it is immoral, inhuman, and permits the profitable to line their pockets with the guts of the poor. But I also come as a Baptist preacher on Good Friday, a season of the year when three dominant religions in the Eastern and Western world share a common ground: Passover in the Jewish tradition, Easter in the Christian tradition, and Ramadan in the Muslim world. All of these share an allegiance of care and compassion that would condemn the immorality of House Bill 3300 because it fetters tax cuts that essentially will serve a famine for the least and a feast for the fortunate. The prophet Micah in the 8th century proclaimed what God requires, particularly of those charged with the challenge to serve: to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly, caring for the common good. But a 20th century prophet speaks to the moral courage required to do the right thing at the right time, in the right state of mind. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke to the quality of conscience required to do the right thing when legislative propositions such as House Bill 3300 are not just unfair but immoral. In such comments relative to this situation, he would say, in some situations, cowardness asks, is it safe? Expedience asks, is it polite? Vanity asks, is it popular? But conscience asks, is it right? And there are times when one must take a stand rather than safe, not politic or not popular, but because it is right. The time is always right to do right. And to do right and to do the right thing is to oppose the unfair and unjust constraints in House Bill 3300. House Bill 3300 must be defeated because it's unfair, it's unjust, and it just ain't right. Thank you. Amen.
So I have a couple questions. Now, you can't vote in there, but you can surely vote out here. So my first question is, how many people, if you vote yes or no, how many people want to see the elimination of Meals on Wheels? How many people want to pay more for their groceries? How many people want to pay more for everything else in West Virginia? How many people want to have cut college in West Virginia? Well, there's one thing you can do about that, and that is to call your senator and to call your House of Delegates representative and tell them how you feel about these bills, which are going to hurt families, they're going to hurt children, they're going to hurt all the people in West Virginia. They're going to keep us from moving forward, they're going to take us back, and you just got to let them know that don't do this. Remember the people of West Virginia, and we can move forward. Thank you all very much. It was good to have you here today.
Thank you to the Center on Budget and Policy. All right, I've got you in person.